So you were called 4 times for 4 small roles on Dharma and Greg.
Yeah.
What happened each time?
Yeah, that was the only contact I had when I moved to LA. Jillian O'Neill, I was put in touch with her through a friend was a producer in Chicago in commercials. And she said, look, when something comes up you're right for, we'll call you in. Well, she did. And first one didn't get a call back, second one didn't get a call back, third got a call back, there might have been 5, because then I went back to producers, and it's like major producers, right, who did Dharma and Greg. So it was going in and meeting Chuck Lorre, which, huge. And then on the 4th or 5th one, I got the part, and that was my first time on TV. I told people when I moved to LA, they were like, "Oh, you're going to be the next lifeguard on Baywatch." This dates when I moved to LA, and I was like, I might be a sunburned victim on a beach on the show Baywatch, but I don't think I'm going to be the next lifeguard." Which goes into my whole spiel on realistic expectations in our business and how important those are. Because if I'd moved to LA and thought, well, maybe I'll be the next lifeguard on Baywatch, I'd probably be pretty unhappy, because I don't think I would ever gotten that part.
You always did commercial work. How key do you think that was in avoiding going after things out of kind of desperation?
Well, being successful with commercials, and I owe a lot of that to a gentleman named Joe Pitka, who hired me a ton of times in commercials.
And kind of like the Spielberg of commercial work.
He is.
And you did like 50 commercials.
Something like that, yeah. Campaigns. And he had his players, they called them the Pitka players. And if you were in there, people were envious that you were a Pitka player, because you'd get a phone call and say, "Hey, you're shooting a Xerox commercial tomorrow." It's like, well, I didn't audition for a Xerox commercial. It's like, Joe wants you, and you'll get a phone call. But Joe, I told him, I'm like, "Man, you gave me the ability to walk into a room and not smell of desperation," because I was successful doing commercials, and I had a house, and I was able to pay for it. When I walked into a room, I was like, I want this. I prepared to get this. I did my best to show that I would be a good business partner in those situations, but if I don't get it, I'm going to be okay.
The Office. Mm-hmm. What stands out from that?
Well, everyone was auditioning for this great TV show, because we knew Ricky Gervais, we knew the show, and Allison Jones, best casting director, comedy casting director there is. It was a pleasure and an honor for any time you ever got to go in for her, because it just felt like, she has great taste, and when she picks you to come in, you're just like, oh, I must be great for that moment, right? For that thing. And so anyone that had any, momentum with an agent or manager or whatever was getting to audition for The Office. And I went in just like everybody else and read for the Steve Carell part. And then they kind of parse it out after that. And they're like, well, you're probably not this, probably not that, but come back and then read for this. And so I went in and read for Brian Baumgartner's part. And it was him and me and Jorge Garcia that were on tape to get the final part, that part of Kevin. And Brian got it. It was disappointing in the moment. I'll never forget knowing I didn't get it.
Devastating or?
Gut-wrenching, awful. Because that's what I always tell people you have to be prepared for is absolutely preparing for the most amount of success you can have, meaning money, like signing contracts that show you in year 6 you're going to make this. You test for it, and you sign all these paperwork, and you go in and you prepare. I always looked at auditions as my opportunity to put on a show. You go in and you're pumped and amped, and then you don't get it, and it's over. Done, and then it's on TV, and then it's an awesome show. I was a huge Office fan. I love the show, and Brian crushed it. Brian killed it. 100% right guy got the part. But it doesn't change how disappointed I was.
What do you think failure taught you?
I guess I had thick skin. I never looked at the job as acting. I looked at it as auditioning. So I don't know that I ever looked at it outwardly as failure. I think I internalized it and felt pretty crappy about myself. But I always, this unwavering sort of belief I had in my talent and the thick skin, I looked failure as, you know, their mistake, their fault. I'm going to find my success. And I looked at it a little bit competitive for myself. Like I did kind of have, not that I was this great athlete, but I have an athletic mentality where I motivated myself. Like that made me feel more anxious and more vigor to succeed. So I think it probably pumped me up.
And what was it about Almost Famous that you've called the most meaningful step in your career?
Well, movie parts are the hardest to get, you know, and it doesn't matter if it's one line or the lead. So me getting an audition for Almost Famous, Gail Levin, casting director for Cameron Crowe, incredible lady. I auditioned for Philip Seymour Hoffman's part. And the end of the audition, she goes, "Where are you from, honey?" I said, "Oh, I'm from Kansas City. From Chicago. I was 2 years there." She goes, "Well, you're very good. You're not going to get this part." I was like, "Well, duh, like, I have one episode of Dharma and Greg on my resume." Like, she's like, "But I think Cameron would really like you. I want you to come back and meet him." And I leave there feeling so great. And sure enough, she calls me back, and I come in, and I meet Cameron Crowe, and he's like, "You're awesome, dude." And he's following me around in his office. I mean, like, "Now do it like this, do it like that." This camcorder. And he was like, "You're great." And I left there, my blue Dodge Durango. I called mom and dad and I said, "It's a good thing I have a SUV because I have to lay my head down in the back of my SUV right now. I feel so good about myself." Cameron made me feel like a freaking movie star. And then they called and said I got the part. And so what it did for my career.
And do you still remember that feeling?
Oh, like it was yesterday. But what it did for me is it gave me such confidence. I mean, I spent an afternoon with Cameron Crowe in his office over 5 lines. And Cameron is like, "Buddy, your scene scores. Every screening we have, you're the first time that you kind of relieve the tension of the movie, like this moment, this funny." So that little tiny part, which Cameron Crowe would not allow me to think of as a tiny part, which then fills me with such confidence to make sure it's not a tiny part, gave casting directors something to talk about, because in our business, nobody trusts their own taste, right? Everybody's like, "Well, I think he's good, but Cameron Crowe says he's good, so he must be good," right? Everybody's looking for some kind of validation. So it gave me immediate validations. Like Eric Stonestreet, you may remember him from Almost Famous. "Oh my God, it's such a great scene." And now I'm like, verified.